I have so much to go through here, and I don't want to reveal any of the plot stuff. So let's just talk about in the most non-spoilery terms. Let's get this part out of the way.
That's right, folks. Spider-Man is in fact Peter Parker.
Listen, I did not kill Mysterio. The drones did.
The drones that are yours.
Support characters were great, all of them, including some I won't mention, but in particular, Ned and MJ, I thought did, those actors who played Ned and MJ did particularly good roles, and whether it be with humor or with drama. They do have a few cringe, like, humorous lines that they're given, and they're just awful lines, to be fair. So I don't put that on the actors themselves. What I will give the writing for is for Tom Holland's character. Tom Holland nails Peter, that role of Peter Parker and those elements of Peter Parker that I think this version, like with Homecoming and Far From Home, a lot of people said he was lacking, or like just kind of needless criticism, but like things that make Peter Parker, and I just can't believe you can get to the end of this movie and say that's not like the Peter Parker that you're thinking of, or if you were really critical of this version, because like he has elements in this character that, you know, it just not only makes him Spider-Man, I would just say scratch that, make him just a hero, because without like throwing a punch or like defeating a villain, he just makes some decisions that like you would have to call heroic, regardless of it beating up a bad guy or anything like that. So I thought they did really well with Peter's character in particular. But so I'm going for something great. Let's go for something terrible. Doctor Strange is terrible. Every decision he makes is completely, it's just for the sake of the plot of the film. The plot of the film is complete trash, especially in the first act, but we'll get to that. Everything Doctor Strange does is a complete contradiction to him from scene to scene. Like nothing, he's a complete nonsense character. He's not a real character. He's just there because the plot needs him to do something, and the character will justify it. So I just ended up absolutely despising his character by the end of the film. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the non-spoilery part. No, I didn't give you a lot. I would definitely say go watch the film. The first act is not great, but the next two acts are amazing, especially where we leave off with this. If this is the last film of this trilogy, then if we're just going to cap it out at 3, I thought it was a great ending, a great place to leave it off at. But now let's get to the spoiler parts. I have lots to discuss. Let's get started already.
We tampered with the stability of space-time. The multiverse is a concept about which we know frighteningly little.
All right, we start off with a previous, pretty serious recap of Mysterio framing Peter for his murder, and he also reveals his identity on top of that, like an extra screw you.
I managed to send the elemental back to the dimensional rift, but I don't think I'm gonna make it off this bridge alive. Spider-Man attacked me for some reason. He has an army of weaponized drones, Stark technology. Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. What the?
If you recall, in Far From Home, at the very end, he's dropping off MJ in somewhere in New York, and that's when it gets revealed. And so, also to mention, people thought Mysterio was a hero, and they never realized he was a complete phony or anything like that. It seemed like they were still convinced, or at least as the rest of society was convinced, that he was a true hero, just like Iron Man, just like any other hero, and that Spider-Man killed him just in that moment. So you have a really hostile reaction from the crowd around MJ, especially since she just got dropped off, and they're like, "Oh, are you his girlfriend? Like, what the hell?" And then they start to flee, Peter and MJ, and then he's like zipping around the city, and especially with the music, I thought it was a well put together dramatic scene. I thought like, oh, okay, we're starting off way more serious than the beginning of the other two films. But we have problems here. It's with, I was going to say almost all, but really it's all modern Marvel movies. They all have this issue where they can't help themselves. They have to undo tension with humor all the time. And so, for example, we have a scene where Peter calls up Ned, and then they're just screaming "do do do" to each other, like it's supposed to be goofy. And then we're playing up Happy and May's relationship. They're about to break up, it seems like, and it's just like, oh, okay, I thought this was supposed to be a serious moment, but I guess not, because you're making jokes. And it's like, I would say, feel free to find it funny. I wouldn't say that it wasn't funny. I would just say it creates this inconsistent tone, because it's still the same scene. We're still carrying the momentum of that seriousness, and they have to keep going back and forth, treating this as a serious situation, comedic. And not to say that you can't have those two, but I just don't think it was handled appropriately. And if I were to give a comparison, let's give it, to be fair, let's start with Far From Home in this situation. The opening there, I thought, was handled far more appropriately. It was making fun of high school kids' memorial project. We open up with a video of all the former heroes, but clearly it's a crappily made video by kids. And it's also catching the audience up to the events of Endgame, like who passed away and which heroes perished in that fight, and it's just making fun of kids' projects, high school kids' projects, and the humor there was far more forgivable. It wasn't as if the scene was taking place the moment of or the day of even. There was no immediate threat to deal with, and it was also setting up a goofier tone than the Avengers films. And whereas, at least Homecoming and Far From Home have really gone out of their way to show it's like, this is not an Avengers level threat. But it's not going for the same tone for the whole movie. So let's move on to some character moments I did like, though. Right after that, there's a whole interrogation scene where they're interrogating all of Peter's friends and families, and I did like MJ in certain scenes. Actually, she might have improved the most out of all the characters, because Ned is pretty static, but MJ, it's like she was sort of annoying in Homecoming, but she had really good lines there. And then they toned it down with Far From Home, and she's at her most likable here. And just one scene that really got me to hook onto her character was she's being interrogated, and she's asking for a lawyer. She's not giving for any information. I thought it was great, because it's pretty consistent with how her character has always been. So for her to handle a situation like this, I thought was great. And whereas Ned is easily manipulated, which is pretty consistent with his character. That's not a knock on his character at all. But there's one part where their interrogator comes in, and he's like, "Oh, how did you feel when MJ told you Peter was the one? Peter was Spider-Man." And he's like, "What? I always knew he was Spider-Man. In fact, I'm the guy. I'm his guy in the chair," and blah 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 blah, and giving up all his secrets. And as I said, it's pretty consistent for his character to be awkward in these sorts of tense situations. If you recall, in Homecoming, even when he gets caught in the library.
What are you doing here? There's a dance.
I'm looking at porn.
So, I can't help myself. This is a rough first act, so it's nothing but pure criticisms a lot of the time. So, as nice as those character moments where I feel really mixed about this this following scene. Okay, let's do a little setup here. Let me build a backdrop for you, okay? When we as an audience walked out of Far From Home, right, you might have gone online to speculate what would happen in the next film. I'm just talking about right when Far From Home got released, and you could see it in theaters. And I'm willing to bet a lot of people were asking, how is Peter going to deal with this identity reveal? And how is he going to deal with being framed for murder? Then the speculation became it'd be great if we got Daredevil involved and he's his lawyer. Oh, wouldn't that be sick? But unless you haven't been paying attention to any of basically all of the media surrounding this film and all the trailers, they weren't focused on that second point at all. And it seemed like that plot point got completely dropped. And that's because it was absolutely dropped. We have Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock making, I was gonna say like an appearance or whatever. It's just a pure cameo. It's a one scene thing, and he's just there to tell you like, oh, don't worry, none of those charges are gonna stick. You're good to go. And like I said, that whole thing was completely dropped. It was just a shame because like if you're just gonna watch all 3 movies in a row, I wonder, like let's say 5 years from now, even if you were to watch all 3 of those movies, would that be cohesive? But I don't know. Well, whatever. It just ends up being being covered up with humor at Happy's expense. It's like, oh, you're also gonna need a lawyer, and he's like, because he's also being investigated, because Peter was using Stark Tech. Happy works for Stark Industries, so obviously he would get investigated down the road. So though all this is happening in the same apartment that everyone knows Aunt May and Peter live in, okay? It seems kind of ridiculous that they would want to stay there long enough to have someone throw a brick through a window, and that's the one that's the one moment that Daredevil gets. He catches a brick from a completely different angle that there's no way he could have saw it, even if he wasn't blind. But he catches the brick, and Peter asks, how'd you do that? He says, I'm a great lawyer. I thought that, I mean, I'm glad that he at least got to stick around for one cool thing. But yeah, I would have liked to see more of him around. Unfortunately, that's the last of him. We're just going to have to say bye, Daredevil, bye.
You're not alone. We never were.
So, you would have figured now that Tony would have had a safe house for Peter in advance, or really any of the other heroes, just a safe house they can go to in case they need it, because they live dangerous lifestyles. But May and Peter have to live with Happy in his condo, and I thought that was nuts. Like, I'm like, what? Wouldn't Peter be sitting on like a large sum of cash somewhere that Stark would have left him just in case? It's not like he isn't absurdly rich. And that's when he jokes with MJ about still being broke, and that was the one element that like drove me insane the whole time while I was watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That the fact that Falcon is poor and the fact that Peter is poor, and you just have to ask yourself, but how is that even possible? Are these guys serial gamblers? Did Tony leave them nothing? Like, what? And let's just say, okay, let's be fair here. Let's just say they had absolutely nothing to their name. They had no assets. They have no cash in the bank, whatever. We're not talking about just anyone off the street. We're talking about heroes that saved the world multiple times. They would be incredibly famous. They are incredibly famous. And they could easily be paid for interviews or speeches or get sponsorships. This is absolutely insane. Start up a YouTube channel yourself. And, people are going to want to know what Falcon or Peter have to say. Like, they want to know about their adventures. Like, the idea that there are people out there in real life right now who are rich because they were famous, who just got rich because of their fame. Like, I'm thinking Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian. They were already pretty well. They were from well-off families already, but it's like they weren't known for talents or skills. They were just famous, and that was it. So, and you're telling me Spider-Man and the new Captain America wouldn't like have money problems? Like, get the hell out of here! Like, unless you're telling me like, oh yeah, they're bad with money. They made bad investments. That's the only thing I want to hear about them not having money. Okay, so let's skip ahead. Peter is acclimating to his school life. Everyone wants to avoid him. Like they're just giving him, they're staring daggers at him. It's not going great, and he's greeted by his 3 teachers. And I was glad to see Hannibal Buress' character come back, and he believes that. That he killed Mysterio. Mysterio's right, and he keeps like saying that under his breath, and you can hear him the whole time. It's great. But though, I'm gonna have to have some serious criticism about the comedy here, okay? Because the whole like believing he's the one who killed Mysterio and believing in Mysterio. That should have totally been JB Smooth's character, because he was totally into conspiracy theories and the occult. It totally would have fit his character more. I thought it would have been funny if Hannibal's character didn't even know that Peter was Spider-Man until that moment where they met, when he saw like all the Spider-Man paraphernalia in the back and all that stuff. He just makes that realization. It's like, oh, he's Spider-Man. Because his character was so apathetic in Homecoming. Like, he seemed so out of the loop, didn't care. So that would have been more appropriate for his character. And yes, I know it's a one-off scene, and who gives a shit? Only me. Okay. Just to wrap up, Martin Starr steals the show. He's absolutely hilarious in this film, even in this one scene, and he's a show stealer in all 3 films. He absolutely is incredible in all of them, and he even has one joke here with the glass case that I thought was funny. But just moving along, I have to start speeding up. We have a lot to go through. Moving along, Peter, Ned, and MJ, they all get rejected from all the colleges they apply to, especially their number one choice, MIT. And it's explicitly stated in the letter, their rejection letter. They don't shy away from it at all. They make it really clear that it was due to the Spider-Man and Mysterio controversy, because again, remembering that Mysterio is still considered a hero by most people in this universe, right? So even if the charges were dropped, I mean, I think most people know in society today, like, you get accused of something, that's gonna stick with you, even if the court of law actually, you know what, Daredevil has Matt Murdock has a line about it too, but even if you win in the court of law, that's not the same as the court of public opinion. And they bring that up. So, he might have dropped the charges, but not from the people's point of view. And that's when Peter decides to say, you know what, screw it. It's ruining his friends' lives. Let's speak with Doctor Strange. And that's what I really appreciated about his character. Like, it might be me reading too much into it, but I thought, like, the fact that he didn't think about it, or maybe it was layering it on, to be fair, but he didn't make this decision at any other point that it was when it was affecting him. But when it started ruining Ned and MJ's lives, he's like, okay, no, enough's enough. Let's see what Doctor Strange can do. And, oh, jeez. Oh, man. Here we go. Oh, Peter asks he asks Doctor Strange to reverse time so that Mysterio never revealed his identity. That is exactly what he came for. That's exactly what he says.
When Mysterio revealed my identity, my entire life got screwed up. I was wondering if maybe you could make it so that he never did.
That's his request, okay? So Mysterio never revealed his identity. That is what he wants. And there are problems with this right off the bat. And not all of them criticisms of the film, but like just with trying to get this goal done, this goal accomplished. First, as the film itself mentions, the Time Stone was destroyed. Second, the Time Stone they used to defeat Thanos was returned to the other timeline when Captain America brought it to them. And then third, this is where I take issue with the film. Okay, because Strange says, "Oh yeah, there's a spell that I can alter people's memories so that they never knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man," and that's when Wong steps in. And Wong was we didn't learn this until just now. Wong was made Sorcerer Supreme in that 5-year gap while Strange was dead, and so I guess they're Sorcerer Supremes, or I think I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. But Wong mentioned something about it being dangerous because it messes with different realities, and that's another important part about that. Like, doing the spell will cause issues with different realities, or can at least. So that makes it extremely dangerous. Not like he cares, because he just pisses off. He's like, screw it, it's your guys' problem. And at this point, I'd like to ask, what is so special about the Infinity Stones when we have this level of magic, right? Because there was so much mystique and like, oh, the Infinity Stones, we gotta get them. Like, also Strange has a mind wipe power, so he could have wiped any villain that has thought in their head, like has a brain, has a motivation. He can just make them forget their motivation. And then that's it. Like, he just defeats every villain. They just put them in a catatonic state. Like, why would you even have to deal with any of these villains, like, using brute force? And the fact that he took magic so seriously in Endgame, like, he's willing to put other people's lives on the line. He's like, I don't care. Like, I take this extremely seriously. Like, Tony, Peter, your lives mean nothing to me.
If it comes to saving you, or the kid, or the time stone, I will not hesitate to let either of you die, because the universe depends on it.
But now, when Peter's life is inconvenienced, he's willing to bend reality. And it's not as if it was a life-threatening issue either, okay? Just as we saw in the trailer, Strange and Peter do not have any discussions as to the ramifications of the spell, alright? Strange decides to tell Peter while he's doing this spell what the consequences are as he's performing it.
The entire world is about to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Wait, everyone?
He also decides that even though it's a complicated spell that requires a lot of concentration, he's still going to have Peter in the room with him and have a chat. He's even willing to alter the spell in the middle of casting it so that his family and friends' memories aren't affected.
So MJ's gonna forget about everything we've ever been through. Oh my God, Ned, he's my best friend. Well, my Aunt May should really know.
Stop talking!
And at this point, it's almost as if the scene is being played for laughs. I think it kind of was, which I take a huge issue with, considering this is going to be what kicks off the conflict of the movie. And now, that wouldn't be a problem, let's say, in a Deadpool movie, where the consequences don't mean much because every single scene is played for laughs. But we're absolutely meant to take Peter's situation in earnest here. That's how these scenes are played out. And Strange also doesn't bother to stop the spell after Peter makes all these demands. And we know he could have stopped the spell, because that's exactly what he does. He could have stopped the spell earlier, but he decides to stop it after this. After Peter complicates things to him, and it's like, no, can you amend this and change this? And while he's casting, he does exactly that. After doing all these alterations, he says, okay, fine, putting a cap on it. Stop. The spell is done. We're not going to go through with it. At this point, like, okay, he could have stopped earlier on when he made like the first two requests, and he could have gone like, okay, hey Peter, it doesn't seem like you've thought this all the way through. Why don't you take the night to sleep on it? We can come back tomorrow, and if you have any questions, we can go through it, right? And figure out what you need. Instead, he chastises Peter for changing the spell. But last I checked, Spider-Man can't cast magic, so that seems like a you problem. And while I did like that Strange points out to Peter, he didn't even bother pleading his case with the universities before skipping to a magical solution. He didn't just think to talk with the universities, which I thought was funny because I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't he just do that? He skips to a magical solution, like mind altering or like reality altering spells. Not like Peter even understood magic in any way. But this is where I don't agree with Strange here, where it's like, how is Peter supposed to understand anything you're doing? Like, you didn't explain any of this to him. You just said, oh yeah, I can get that done for you. And then, you started messing around, and then you started to explain it more. And then Peter was like, oh shit, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted people, the whole reason this started off was I want Pete to undo what Mysterio did. I didn't want to alter memory of all time. Like, that's not what he asked. Okay. So, since he took so long to stop it, since Doctor Strange took so long to stop the spell and he let it get out of control, it had unintended effects, but we don't know that at the time. We just thought, oh, he stopped the spell, he kicks Peter out. Most rational thing he's done so far. All right. Peter tracks down the MIT admissions officer to try and convince her to reconsider MJ and Ned's enrollments. Another gold star for Peter. Look, I don't care about myself, but I do care about my friends, and they don't deserve this. And it's a great moment for his character. One of several great moments for his character. However, this is interrupted by Doc Ock tearing up the bridge, and it's clearly the same character from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, as he makes a reference to the same mechanism that he was working on from that film, the sun thing, harnessing the power of the sun or whatever, that mechanism, machinery. And I'll hand another gold star to Spider-Man here as he uses the suit from Endgame with the mechanical spider legs popping out. And which for some reason he decided not to use in the finale from Far From Home, which is just like, why wouldn't you use the best suit always in every dangerous situation? Even if it's not super dangerous, it could still be, things could still escalate, right? And for some reason, yeah, he just had a lapse in judgment in Far From Home and decided not to use it. But hey, another gold star to the film for the nanotech armor. If you recall from Infinity War, Tony used the exact same tech for his suit, where it was like molding and it could be chipped off, but it could be moved around to defend himself. You can make a shield out of it, or it could be molded as a weapon, like Tony uses it as a spear to try and stab at Thanos. Obviously, Tony would want his protege to have the same equipment as him, and Peter at this point gets a piece of his armor ripped right off of him. And just as he's about to be stabbed by Doc Ock where he's been exposed, the armor moves from his face down to his chest, revealing his face, but more importantly, blocking his chest, right? And this is important for the plot because of the face reveal. Because Doc Ock is like weirded out. He doesn't recognize this Peter Parker. And also, the nanotech armor portion was ripped off by Doc Ock earlier off his chest, is now surrounding the tentacles and taking them over, essentially. Completely nullifying any of his abilities. And it's like, okay, whew, let's take a breather. Green Goblin comes in from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and appears, and then we catch our break because Strange teleports him back to his base. Basically, what's going on? What do we need to do in this film? He needs to return all these people, capture all these guys, all these villains that have been brought here from another dimension, and put them back because of unspecified danger to their reality. He does, like, it would have been nice if he was really clear on what sort of danger. He just says it's a danger to our reality that all these villains are appearing. There's gonna be a whole mess, and off screen at some point Strange already captured Lizard from Amazing Spider-Man, and Ned and MJ join Peter's efforts, and that's where we get that stupid trailer line with, oh, Scooby-Doo this crap. Oh god, I feel just even saying the line, yeah. But more importantly, and this is where I stand with MJ, it's like MJ rightly points out, it's like, it seems like it's your fault, okay, Strange? Like, this is all up to you, but whatever at this point. You know, it's funny too, because we're going to get MJ and Ned involved, but no Daredevil. Like, 2 kids, but we're not going to invite Daredevil to the show. Come on. Damn it. Also, that line making fun of Doc Ock's name rears its ugly head again from the trailer. And it's just like, aren't there a bunch of characters with stupid names in this universe? Like Stephen Strange? Like, we've already been through this. Like, yes, people have ridiculous names. So the fact that they'd be surprised by Otto Octavius, like, yeah, okay. Regardless, Peter ends up facing off with Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2, and in his blue form, which was surprising because the trailers didn't show that form at all. While it would have been interesting to see them go one-on-one, Sandman makes an appearance from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. He interjects, making it easier for Spider-Man to take out Electro. And they smash electrical poles into him, and then they immediately get rid of the glowing blue body for him, and he just looks like Jamie Foxx. And it doesn't make sense, but they really just wanted to change the look. I don't take much issue with it if it's only aesthetics, right? Like, it's not going to affect his abilities or anything like that. Like, or at least doesn't make him weaker, because that would be lame if they did that. So gold stars all around, because they really play up the empathy for Norman Osborn. Like, he gets pretty much the moment he takes off his mask, he smashes it. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they address that he's like struggling mentally with it, even more so than I think in the original Spider-Man, because he was far more villainous than that, I thought. Even with the few moments where it's like, oh, okay, he's breaking down as a person, and this Green Goblin persona. is really a hindrance. Obviously, it's taking over. It's taking him over, and he makes steps at least to work against his alter ego, and all the villains unite and discover at this point. I guess I should mention. Somehow Norman finds himself at Feast, which is the organization that Aunt May works at, and that's how Peter is able to grab Norman and bring him back. And at this point, I think it was less than halfway through the movie, which is so odd to me. But we have all the villains there. They're all united, and they all start talking to each other. It's like Otto's like, "Oh, Norman, what the hell? You're dead. Like, what's going on?" And then even with Sandman's like, "Well, Doc Ock, you're dead too." So I don't know how that works. Or at least they're really confused about the situation. And even Electro, Lizard, they're in an odd situation as well. Like, wait, you're dead. Like everyone, they're discovering they've all died, and they're thinking back to the last moments. And I think it's implied that the moment before they died, they got brought to this universe. And Doctor Strange is like making preparations. He's to send them back, and he's like, "Yeah, screw you guys. I don't care."
They all die fighting Spider-Man. It's their fate.
And Peter takes huge issues with this because he basically giving them a death sentence. If they send them back, they're gonna die instantly in that moment or whatever. I'm not sure if it's exactly gonna work out one for one. Like the moment they get sent back, they're dead. But Doctor Strange doesn't care. He justifies by them staying, they'll do greater harm to the multiverse, because all of a sudden now he cares about the multiverse. He didn't care when it inconvenienced his friend, but whatever. While that might seem understandable from the most simple perspective, his explanation comes across too vague. Like, what is the threat to the multiverse? Like, he doesn't really explain it enough. What exactly will happen? Do we have enough time to maybe alter their fates? You know? So this is where I totally sided with Peter, having a lack of information from Doctor Strange. They already messed with the multiverse, like consequence free, I might add, already in Endgame alone, because Loki escaped his reality. That didn't cause a whole bunch of nonsense to happen. And another version of Gamora is just hanging around in space somewhere out there, okay? And yet this hasn't created any trouble for them. It's so funny that all of a sudden Strange takes things seriously again, like he was in Endgame, but was willing to mess with the multiverse to mind wipe people. Wong even mentioned this specific issue with this spell, okay? So, however, there's no acknowledgement from Strange that he made a mistake or should have tried to do it, or just shouldn't have tried to do it in the first place. Right? You should have just like at least an acknowledgement, like, "Oh man, this is a bad idea. I should have never done this." No, there's none of that. It's all the blame gets pushed on Peter for some reason, the guy who can't use spells. So he doesn't even want to help Peter with this ethical conundrum that he's been put in. And Strange is like, "Nah, screw it." And then Peter grabs the box and starts running away. And then Strange pulls him into the mirror dimension. They start having their whole fight together. And Peter's somehow able to beat Doctor Strange, which shouldn't even be possible, especially in the mirror dimension, but whatever. And he just leaves Strange in that dimension, and he pops up in front of his whole rogues gallery of villains all here, all together at his mercy. And as much as I understood he wanted to save them, I didn't agree it was a good idea to free them all at once and bring them up to Happy's condo. that was just a terrible idea. And you know, maybe if he had just brought Doc Ock with him, because he can control his tentacles at least, or maybe just Osborn, because at worst he only has super strength without his gear, any of his gear, and I'm pretty sure Spider-Man can beat him, like just in a pure strength fight. And let's not also forget that all these villains didn't just die for no reason in the first place, okay? They probably deserved it for what they did, and a lot of it was because of their own actions too. But regardless, they at least Peter manages to help Doc Ock with the chip on his neck and that inhibitor chip. And it was the most inconvenient time for everyone else for the Green Goblin persona to emerge. But if we treat him as an individual entity, it was the most opportune moment for him as well. It was just an awful idea all around to have all these guys together. And Green Goblin starts the attack, and then Electro, Sandman, and Lizard, they all join in. They practically destroy that whole building complex. It goes down like crazy. And I think at one point he tosses a grenade towards Peter and Aunt May, and he says something about the Green Goblin has a line like, "No good deed goes unpunished," and that mirrors Aunt May's situation as she gets caught in the explosion and then succumbs to her wounds, which is really surprising. I mean, for as light as these movies have been taking themselves in Homecoming and Far From Home, the fact that that was really unexpected to kill off Aunt May. Especially, like, she kind of seemed like a character that would always be safe. Like, oh yeah, she would never be affected by any of Peter's life. But then then it happens, and I thought the actors sold that scene really well. Tom Holland and Marissa Tomei. I thought, yeah, they did a great job with both that. And she gives the whole line about great power and great responsibility. It really worked out well, and this is definitely the low point of the movie. And another one, this is supposed to be a lighter scene following this, but I just couldn't believe another thing that was odd. So Ned manages to use the sling ring, or he just puts it on his finger. He's like, man, I wish Peter was here. And then he learns just by doing that to do the teleportation circle. And I thought, like, okay, that's a little ridiculous that he just knows magic right off the bat, but whatever. It's a little like out of all the conveniences in the film. So he's like, oh, okay, I'll ask for Peter. Come on. And then he tries teleporting to get to Peter. And we see what looks like Peter in an alleyway, and he's shrouded in darkness, and it's almost like a horror movie because they call out to him and he comes running towards them, and it's a completely different Spider-Man in a different costume, and they start freaking out, screaming, and he takes off his mask, and it's Andrew Garfield, and we have a humorous introduction to his character, and it's the same with Tobey Maguire. He gets brought into this. And I'm just going to start referring to the actors' names in this instance because this will get way too confusing otherwise. Which is much, you know what, this whole levity with the introduction of these two characters, this whole humorous nature of this scene, it was much needed after the somber scene we had just had. It felt appropriately handled as opposed to the opening scene where we're competing with comedy and drama, where they're just rivaling each other. And, we okay, enough of the humor. We start off with a strong emotional scene as we follow Tom Holland. He's given up on saving the villains. He's like, you know what? I don't care anymore. They killed Aunt May. They're your problem now, and if they die, they die. It's not a big deal to me. Like, I don't care anymore. And you could see he's at his low point, and we've seen that with at least Toby. I can't. It's been a while since I watched the Andrew Garfield ones, or had even a reason why I would want to. But regardless, Toby and Andrew are able to convince him otherwise. They work with us. We'll get you out of this situation. And this whole thing played out really well, as they're the only ones that can really understand his very specific situation, and they used their personal tragedies to kind of build this bridge to Tom. And I think Andrew Garfield performed excellently, in particular as he describes himself after Gwen's death and how he stopped pulling his punches against criminals, which that will come into play later, actually. So we get some good moments with all the characters, especially them asking probing questions about the differences between the three of them, such as Toby having organic web shooters, and they concoct this plan to defeat each villain. Though, thinking about it now, it is odd that Sandman would work with the villains, as he seemed much more stable and reasonable. Like, just moments ago, he was helping out Peter, and like, his whole motivation is his daughter, at least from Spider-Man 3's perspective. So it seemed odd that he would be working together with the villains. This whole battle between the three of them, it's really like a celebration of the past two film franchises. And I don't think I was as harsh to Ghostbusters as I should have, because they did so much more here than in Ghostbusters, where they just bring back the old crew and then they're there for 2 seconds. This one is like a truly a celebration. And that's not to say they don't poke fun at those series as well. In particular, Amazing Spider-Man villains, like all their origins are made fun of. And everyone knows the moment from the trailer where MJ's falling, and then initially Tom goes in to get her, but he gets tackled by the Green Goblin, and it's left up to Andrew Garfield to save MJ. And some may say, oh, that's predictable, but I say it was obviously perfect, okay? This moment means more if you've seen Amazing Spider-Man 2, but they set up the story about Gwen's death, so you're given enough context why he would be crying after saving her. Like, they built that moment up. So it's not like it came out of nowhere, or it's just, you wouldn't get it if you only watched Amazing Spider-Man 2 or something like that. That was a great moment just within the context of the film. And one moment that doesn't stand alone as much, but I thought was decent, was Toby neutralizes Sandman's powers. But there's deeper meaning to the scene within the film, and if you've watched Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and 3.
Remember Ben Parker?
What does it matter to you anyway?
Everything!
Toby in this film says that the death of the man that he thought killed Uncle Ben brought him no closure or no happiness whatsoever. We know by Spider-Man 3 that it was actually Flint Marko that killed Uncle Ben. And when Toby defeats Sandman here, he has no ill will towards him, and he's genuine in his efforts to save him. And of course, they also play the Sam Raimi theme, so how could you not love it, right? And it's also good to see Doc Ock not only reunite with Tobey Maguire, but then he also saves him from Electro on top of that. And I would never say that Doc Ock's arc wasn't completed in Spider-Man 2, but this is certainly a great addition, addendum, whatever. It was just great to see. All the others except Green Goblin at a point are all taken out, and Tom is still upset over the death of Aunt May, and him and Norman have a fight, Green Goblin, and it's just brutally one-sided. Like, Tom Holland is just beating the shit out of the Green Goblin. It's pretty brutal. Oh my goodness. But Tom picks up the glider that Goblin was on and almost kills him in a very similar way that he died in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, with the two hooks on the glider, and is about to like stab down at him while Green Goblin's on his knees. So it's a pretty brutal setup. And Toby sees this. He steps in, grabs the glider from hitting him, and then at that point, Andrew Garfield tosses the formula to Tom, and he injects Norman. And it was just great that Toby, of all people, was the one to step in and like, no, this isn't right. This isn't you. This isn't us, right? I thought that was great for Toby. And I think that was like the strongest Tobey Maguire moment, much like how Andrew saves MJ. And so all the villains are subdued, but unfortunately now we see these huge purple tears in space appearing, and Tom is like, oh shit, and Strange is trying to close them one by one, but it's just getting worse and worse, and the holes in space are getting bigger and bigger, and it's going to be a nightmare. There's going to be tons and tons of villains, and it's going to be an infinite amount of people who know who Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and they're all popping through. And Tom is the one to do this, which is a little odd, but Tom makes the decision to wipe everyone's memory of Peter Parker, including his loved ones, like everyone, just absolutely everyone. And the reason I said this is odd is my only issue with this is, again, Strange's character, which I wouldn't berate him for being sad about losing memories of his, a friend or ally or whatever. However, he's also hesitant to cast the spell, and it's Tom who needs to push it, who needs to push for that spell to be made, which seems, again, ridiculous. Another moment where Strange is just this odd character. I thought, like, no, we have to do this right now. I don't care whose life is at stake. It's like, Oh man, they just abuse Strange in this movie, and he comes across terribly. He just blames everything terrible he does on Peter. And then even at this moment where he was willing to kill people, he's not willing to lose memories of people. Like, it's just a terrible spell. But this spell that he casts makes it so no one knows who Peter is. No one knows. All right, and that'll be important for later, because Tom and made a promise with Ned and MJ that they'd get reunited and they'd be friends again. Obviously, they'd be in a relationship together. But Tom walks up to the very same cafe that MJ's working at, and he even sees Ned across there. And I think he starts to flirt with her. Or not, I think he does start flirting with her. And it looks like it's going well. It's a good conversation. And I think she brushes her hair aside, and he notices the injuries she sustained in the previous battle. And that's when he's like, I can't do this to them. He decides it's best for him to leave and not get them involved to keep them safe. And another great Spider-Man moment. How could you not like that? If you love Tobey Maguire's character in Spider-Man 1, this is the exact same pretty much moment from that, where I can't get the people I love involved because it's a danger to them. And it's that self-sacrifice, and no one will ever realize it either. I just put that together, right? Yeah, no one has memories, so even Doctor Strange doesn't realize his sacrifice that he gave to people. And he goes off to his shitty apartment, and I think he actually has Aunt May's like sewing machine, and he sews together a suit because I guess his suit got messed up. And it's another great moment for him. We understand this person. We've seen where that character leads a self-sacrificing lifestyle, and he has like the police radio, and he heads off, and it's great. Everything they've done with this character, like it was just a build up to this moment. It kind of reminds me of where he's at in Spider-Man as a character. If this film stopped here, or the film does stop here, you could almost, it doesn't work perfectly, but they could interconnect it with the PS4 Spider-Man, like the Sony Spider-Man, because that's pretty much the same situation he's in. He's in a small rinky-dink apartment. He has a homemade suit. Like, he's a little bit older now. Like, I think he's past college in that one. But yeah, everything they've done with this character, I thought was totally worth getting up until this point. Like, like slowly building up, this is what it means to be Spider-Man, and then getting to that moment where he's basically in the same position that most people will know Spider-Man's usually in. He's in a rinky-dink apartment. He's not doing too well. And you could go like, oh, it's just an origin story for the original one. But I thought the way they built it up there, where now he has all these memories that he can't really share with any of his loved ones, is like crazy. Like, and even there's a great moment with Happy, and how their whole relationship's gone too. Every single relationship that's ever been built up, they're all gone. And I hope they never reverse that. I hope it's just left there, and that's because that sacrifice will actually mean something if we leave it at that. And those two final acts were amazing. The character moments were great. Doctor Strange, as I mentioned before, is terrible. All the magic makes no sense, because even making Peter forget or making everyone's memories of Peter gone, it's like, okay, what about photos? What about text messages? What about the news? Like, what about that video that has the news that says Peter Parker is Spider-Man? It's like, wait, what happens to all that stuff? And that's why I mentioned, like, the magic makes no sense, or it's so powerful to the point where it's ridiculous. Like, how could any villain stand up to Doctor Strange? Like, all Doctor Strange needs to do is know that a villain's out there, and as long as they have like thought in their brains, he can wipe their memory. Because like, as long as he's not going against a being that's just pure instinct, like, and even then, like, I'm pretty sure, oh my goodness, when you just can wipe people's memories out, it's so ridiculously powerful that I can't believe anyone would even stand a chance. So that's unfortunate. And I really hope with whatever we get with next with Spider-Man, it seems like they really want to follow this particular version of Spider-Man up, and I wouldn't be sad about it. Like, yeah, let's have him team up with Daredevil, maybe take on a smaller thing. No, screw it. No, maybe have them take on Kingpin or whatever. I definitely recommend watching the film, even though it has pretty terrible flaws, and it has it is pretty frustrating in the first 30-40 minutes, but past that moment, it's worth it for all the character moments. And I wasn't expecting I was expecting a little bit more key jangling from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and you know what? No, if you've seen those movies, or even just within the film, they've built up their characters enough. They've given enough to chew enough details to chew on. It's like, oh yeah, what this means to him, like Toby, like and Andrew also being like experienced Spider-Man, like even more so than Tom Holland, or at least more like them being older and more mature. What that brings to that finale. So yeah, that's it for now.